Welcome to the Lost Boys, the Found Fathers podcast. I'm Gabriel O'Sullivan, and joining me is my co-host and friend, Will Haycox. We are men who have suffered the loss of a child, and through this production, we desire to offer encouragement, strength, and hope to our fellow brothers who have traveled the same journey. Good morning, Will.
Good morning.
So we are in episode 12 of our series called Intentional Fatherhood. So if you haven't checked out the other 11 episodes, we certainly encourage you to go back and check those out. And I'm going to go an early shout out. Check out my books online. You can purchase them either digital or paperback. Thy Will Be Done. Put a question mark at the end of that. And the newest one, Every Little Thing, 6 Small Steps to Perfect Peace. My name's Gabriel O'Sullivan. Put those titles and my name in the search bar and you can find those. Appreciate it. Hopefully you get some wisdom insight out of that. If not, you'll just laugh at how bad I am at grammar. So today we're going to be talking about praying for wisdom and strength. So I'm going to throw that over to Will and let him open us up.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to continue, and this one actually works well coming off of the one we did before, was talking about grace and forgiveness and learning what to do when you screw up after trying to lead from your own power. And so this one ties in pretty well with that you're not required to live by your own power and to try to lead by your own power, but you can pray for the wisdom and strength you need to lead your family. So this episode is on wisdom and strength, but it's also just on prayer in general and the benefits of that. So really, I guess the 30,000 foot view is really everything we've done today. We recorded a couple episodes earlier. We talked about support and accountability, and then we talked about grace and forgiveness, and now we're talking about wisdom and strength and prayer. All of these things are tied in with each other, that if you're trying to have accountability, you should be praying through that. If you're seeking for an accountability partner, or if you're, if there's somebody that you're just, you're going to hold each other accountable in a little informal way. You're not necessarily entering into an accountability relationship, but you're just going to discuss life and fatherhood and give each other advice. You need to be praying through that situation. You need to be, asking the Lord for His guidance as to who to, to reach out to and get advice from. Same thing, the last episode we did, embracing grace and forgiveness, that it's not going to come from you. It's not going to come from your own power and your own heart. You're not just able to just have, we are, as humans, are not endless spouts of love and forgiveness and grace. We need that. We get that from the source of Christ. And so that's what we're talking about today, is knowing everything that we've discussed to this point. We're almost done with this series. All of these things are good. All of these things are, are beneficial. Just reading through a couple of them, investing in spiritual growth, discipline, encouraging your children to grow up and, be their own people, prioritizing quality time, leading by example, creating traditions. All of these things require a strength that no man has within himself, that, you can do a lot of things under your own power. You can get a lot of positive things done and help a lot of people and help your children grow up. But ultimately, if you're going to be, just like you closed out our last episode with, if you're going to model Christ, if you're going to live as close as you can as a flawed human to the example that God left us, then you need the power of prayer. You need the power of the Holy Spirit working within you. And prayer is, in this context, is a way to kind of tune your antenna. If you think about I'm a child of the 90s, so I just remember the end of the analog age and the antenna and all that. I actually grew up with that more. I don't think I got cable till I was 15. But, if you ever had like the rabbit ears or the little antenna, we had a little bit higher tech version where like you could turn the little box inside your house, had like a little dial. You could turn it inside the house, and the antenna actually had a motor on it, and it would spin outside the house. So I could, Saturday morning, I'd wake up and I'd dial it to a certain place, and my cartoons would come on, and then my parents would come in and dial it to another place, and the news would come on. And so that was totally unnecessary interlude, sorry. But we are tuning, what I was trying to say is prayer is moving our antenna, tuning our antenna to God's frequency, I guess, is where I'm going to try to drag that metaphor. I'm going to stretch as much as I can.
There you go.
So I think that's the idea we're discussing here today is, we're praying for wisdom and strength. We're praying to be the man that God created us to be and that our family needs us to be, but that we are doing that, really just, it's almost like we have orders, we have commands from higher up in the military, and we're calling base and asking, hey, what's the next thing? What do I need to do now? So that's kind of where we're starting. So.
Yeah, and I think that the kind of title is praying for wisdom and strength, and certainly we want to pray for wisdom and strength. I just pulled up Proverbs, and it says this is Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20, and it says, wisdom cries aloud in the street, in the markets she raises her voice. At the head of the noisy street she cries out, at the entrance of the city gate she speaks. And so God's like telling us, like, hey, I'm actually like begging you to come to me, right? Because I have this information that I want to give you. I want to give you this wisdom. I want to give you knowledge. I want to give you understanding. But again, this is wisdom crying aloud in the street. She's saying, come to me, right, to get this stuff. She's not saying like, wisdom is not grabbing you up by the, collar of your shirt and like screaming at you, like saying, do this, don't do that. Wisdom's crying aloud saying, hey, I'm here if you want to come to me. And so the Lord has given us that open invitation to approach his throne, right? We can approach God's throne by Jesus' grace on our lives. The fact that we can now approach him anytime we want to, right? We don't have to go to a priest to have him go to God for us. We can pray to God. That's a huge blessing. And so the Lord's saying, hey, I've given you these opportunities to listen to me, to listen to my counsel, to get instruction from me, to get this wisdom from me. And I want you to do that, right? And we need to do that. I think it's in James, the Lord says, like, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who will give graciously without restraint, right? So like the Lord is saying, if you ask for wisdom from me, like I will give you so much wisdom, like you can't even understand how much wisdom I'm gonna give you if you'll just ask for it from me. And so I love the idea of us needing to pray for God's wisdom in our parenting, because we need it. Like I need all the help in the world I can get to be a better parent, because I'm not this model parent, and I want to be for my children's sake and to honor the Lord. And so God is just begging us to come to him for this wisdom.
And I think part of this we've kind of discussed, like, I don't know if I'd say new age, but we've discussed like some of the world's practices of like mindfulness and whatever you want to call it, meditation and all these just different, like, I guess mindfulness is the one that comes to mind, because it's such a thing in our culture, like sending thoughts and prayers or good vibes or like all of these like really empty nothings that people say. Bad things happen, you're like, I'm sending you good vibes. I'm like, cool. To what? Like when I'm praying,
right.
And this is just a tangent, but when I'm sending you and I'm praying for you in this crisis, I'm praying to a God that exists, that has power to intervene in your situation. When you're sending me good vibes, not sure if the tie-dye God's going to help. Like I don't know who's helping me there. Sorry,
Shaggy.
But that's yes, probably Shaggy is actually yes. He's some sort of hippie deity. So sorry for the aside. But I think something that they do get right is keeping things, I guess mindfulness or intentionality, maybe a less loaded word to use, like to be intentional with your prayer, to be intentional about how you pray, when you pray, what you're praying for. I think is something that that group gets correctly, that you do need to be focusing on, if you want to talk about like your goals or something I've never done, but like a vision board, like you visualize what you want, you put the things up there, you're keeping it at the forefront of your mind. If you're training for a marathon, so you're training for an Ironman, you don't roll out of bed and you're like, yeah, I guess I should go train today. I haven't trained in a week and a half, and you go train and You don't have any schedule. You don't have any written down plan of what you're going to eat or where you're going to start or where you're going to stop. You just get up, you walk out your front door, you just run down the street, and you might run 3 miles, you might run 15 miles, and then you turn around and you come back home and you're like, all right, that was a good training. You might get to the marathon and you might make it, or you might blow up 3 weeks before trying to run 15 miles after not running for 2 weeks. So if you approach leading your family in wisdom and strength and leading your family wisely in a way that honors the Lord, the same way you'll get out of bed one morning, things are going great, you fly through the day, maybe at lunchtime you'll stop and you'll pray, Lord, thank you for this food, thank you for all the blessings I have, help me to have a great day, amen. And then you go on the rest of your day, you get home, kids are crazy, everything's nuts, get through the night, put the kids to bed, and there's your whole day. Like, that's what you do all week long. Or if you're approaching it with intentionality, you can wake up in the morning, and we've discussed quiet time timing before. Yeah. But let's just say you have to be at work at 7, so you wake up at 5:30, and you get up, you get ready by 5:45 or 6 o'clock. You can do your daily quiet time, and from 6 to 6:30, you are intentionally reading the Bible. You're reading over a passage of scripture, you're praying through it, like the passages that you were just discussing, let's say that's what you have in your schedule for the day, what you're going to read and what you're going to pray through. You're spending time discussing that with the Lord and asking him when you're sitting down to do a quiet time, Lord, use this passage to speak to me, to teach me something about yourself, teach me something about who I am in your eyes, whatever the context is of what you're reading. And then you're going forward into your day, having already started with that eye to the Lord. Now you show up at work at 7, 8 o'clock, whatever time you get to work. You're greeted, it's Monday morning, you're greeted by, our phone system's been down, or whatever, like we got 14 emails or complaints, or this person's going to sue us, or whatever, like there's just something crazy that's going to happen when you get to work. Now you're not scrambling and you're like, all right, I just got woken up out of bed, there's enemies at the gate, I got to go deal with it. It's like you were just in a training exercise. You just ran through these scenarios. Now the scenario number 1 pops up, you're like, I don't know how to deal with this. The Lord said, like we talked about in our last episode, embrace grace and forgiveness and show love and treat people like Christ treats them. If you wake up and you spend that time intentionally in prayer, now you're dealt a situation, you handle it well and loving and patiently, and then at lunchtime maybe something else comes up. Dinner time, maybe something's going on with your family. Your kids did this at school today or disrespected your wife today, whatever it is. Now you can stop. Lord, give me some wisdom and patience as I go in this kid's room, not to scream at him for saying this to my wife. And then you go in there, you have this conversation, maybe it gets tense, but you've prepared intentionally with the way you're praying, the way you're seeking the Lord and his guidance. And intentionality, I guess, is the word, because you are doing everything you're doing throughout the day with a plan and a goal in mind, rather than waking up, sitting there for a few minutes like, man, I wish I could just be the man I want to be today. I wish I could just, have a great day and just, be the wise guy, be the nice guy, be the patient guy. Well, hope it works out. And then you just get up and go live your day. Or you can prepare. And just like we talked about Kobe Bryant, we talk about these guys that Kobe didn't roll out of bed at 12 o'clock in the morning, go to the gym, shoot a couple of shots, hang out for a 6 p.m. Tip off, and then play his game and go home and jump in the bed. Like, he might have been there, and I don't know everything about Kobe's routine, but he might have spent 9 hours preparing for that game that night and shot X hundred shots, all this. He was prepared for what he was doing. He didn't roll out of bed like, I guess I got to play basketball today. And we're not basketball players, but in the grand scheme of what matters in the world, our lives as Christian fathers and husbands matter a whole lot more than whether or not Kobe scored 20 points or 60 points. And if we're going to approach it with a lazy, hope it goes well attitude, we're going to fail ourselves, our wives, and our kids a whole lot more than we're going to succeed for them and come through for them.
Yeah, and we're talking about, being like you talk about Kobe, like we think greatness when we think about him, right? And I had a buddy the other day that said something that I'd probably heard before, but maybe I'd forgotten it. So I'm gonna give him credit for saying it for the first time ever in the history of the world, but it really probably isn't. But he said, greatness is where talent and preparation meet. Okay, and so what we're talking about here is that God's given us all some ability to love our family, through His grace, and to be a dad, okay, or to be a father, to be a husband. He's given us something, right? Like we've got something that He's given us, some type of, skill, ability, talent, ability to love. But we also need to develop that, and that part of that developing is just what you said, is being intentional in prayer. For a second, I was looking up a minute ago. So if you see me on the Facebook and I'm looking at my phone, I'm not like scrolling the internet while Will's talking over here. I'm trying to look up Bible verses.
It's Instagram.
Yeah,
or TikTok. Right. It's what the kids are doing these days. It's TikTok.
I thought it was Tic-Tac.
Tic-Tac. Same
thing. I don't even know.
Same thing. It's okay.
So,
I don't have one.
1 Thessalonians 5:17. It says, "Pray continuously," or "Pray without ceasing." And so I think that in that scenario, we think, just like you said earlier, Will, like having that constant dialogue with the Lord as we go throughout our day, just all the time. I love what you said. The other aspect, so then some people may be like, well, I'm just going to get up and just go about my day, and I'm just going to pray to God as I go throughout the day. Okay, we should do that. But also, we have the model of Jesus, who His disciples would wake up in the morning and be like, where's Jesus? Oh, He's up on the mountainside praying. Okay, so He's modeling how we need to have that early morning, like prayer time, with our Father before our day gets going too. So I think it's a both and, and then, certainly not a bad idea, like you said, as the day closes out, to have prayer as well. And then something that we do, come here, Isaac. Isaac actually recently did a podcast, watch out for that, with one of his buddies, and so we're going to get him on.
Got a guest.
Yeah, we got a guest speaker here today. Isaac, what do you think about us praying at nighttime before you go to bed?
It's a better way to help me go to sleep because I know that God's going to be with me.
That's awesome, yeah. And then what about, sometimes, we don't do it every time, but sometimes we pray in the morning before y'all go to school. Do you think that's a good thing or not a good thing, and why?
A good thing because it helps me get through the day, and I know He's going to be with me the whole day.
Yeah.
Through the struggles.
There you go, man. Good. Look at this guy. This guy's got wisdom beyond his years already.
Make him a regular member of the podcast.
I know, man. Him and his buddies did one for a school project a couple weeks ago, and he did a podcast. What was it called? Like mydadisawesome.com or something like that? No, my dad is a beast at basketball. My dad has the arm of Tom Brady.com. Is that the name of your podcast? No. I don't know. So, yeah, I think that, again, just like you said, Will, it's like that. It's that both and of us having that continual prayer with the Lord throughout the day, no matter what situation we're going through, and having that intentional time in the morning. Do you have like a prayer list that you pray through? Is that something that you do? Or?
Yeah, it's something that I've struggled with for years because I'll get convicted about how I should be more intentional with my prayer, and I'll get I always gravitated towards those little like notepads you see like detectives writing in, like from the 30s, those little flip notepads.
Yes.
And so I'll just use a small notepad and I'll write down Gabe, prayer for this, my wife, prayer for this.
That's cool.
And I'll do that and I'll keep up with it for like a month and a half, and then I'll either lose it or like I'll get so many things that I was going to write in it that now I'm like writing a whole story on one, the pages are like whatever, 3 inches wide by 4 inches wide. So I'm like writing a whole page on one person, and I'm just like, this is too much. I'll just remember it. So I've done that like 6 times probably, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this prayer list this way. I've tried it on my phone, so I'm not the best person for modeling like the practical side of having a intentional prayer list. I think what I've done a better job of is I would say repetition of like certain important things to me in my life and my like faith walk. I think I've shared before, like when I when I started going down, I'm a guy, when I was early teenager, get interested in girls, and you start thinking about that, things you shouldn't be thinking about. I think I was struggling with temptation and lust a lot, and something that somebody taught me, and it was just a little small thing, was like, every time that I felt that temptation, my first response is to pray, Lord, help me to dwell on things that would please you and not to dwell on things that displease you. And just to say that to myself and to pray it, I think that sort of, and you maybe the other side of the people I was talking about might call that a mantra or whatever they want to call it, but a simple prayer that is just like, hiding scripture in your heart. You have that bullet loaded in the gun, ready to, fight back against that temptation. And I think that's something that I have done better with. That, when my wife and I are struggling, or I'm frustrated about work, I've got this, Lord, help me to be a loving husband, help me to be, these things we just talked about, like help me to be patient, help me to be kind, to be compassionate, and to kind of build up the basics, I guess, is something that I think I have done a really good job at. The prayer list is something that I have not done as well with, but I will say, to this next point down here, the importance of intercessory prayer, praying for your children and covering them with God's protection and blessings. I think that's something that, I've done better at, and is really important, that we're praying for our kids, and we're intentional about that, because we believe in the power of prayer and that God does work through prayer. And I remember my parents say this, and my mom says this, and I don't know, how strict it is, how true to every single day it is, but my mom has said for years, like, I prayed for each of you, me and my two brothers growing up, and your wives. Like, I prayed for your future spouse, and like, that's something that I've done, but I haven't done it as consistently maybe as my parents did or my mom did. And so there's some conviction there. I'm like, I should be praying for my daughter's husband and all this a little more. And I don't think about it because, like I say, you get busy in the day and you're like, well, she's 3, I got plenty of time. But there's that preparation that, you're preparing your own heart and asking the Lord's guidance for something that is, far off, but still really important. And you're also, like, we said here in the notes, you're covering your children with God's protection. You're praying for blessings. We obviously have no guarantee that, I could pray hundreds of thousands of times for God to let me win the lottery. God never said, just because you pray for it, I'm giving it to you. So we're not saying if you pray into existence that your child would be valedictorian and get scholarships and marry a rich person and their life would be great. More power to you. Keep praying that. But God's not saying, I'm going to give you all your wildest dreams. He's saying, align yourself with me and my thoughts and my desires, and I'll give you the desires of your heart. When the desires of your heart are things that please God, that's when you have the promise that's what he'll give you. So I think the importance there of just praying for your kids, showing, when we've used this example before, like when you were dating your wife, did you want to see her like a couple times a month, a couple times a week? Was she important enough to you to drive 10 miles to see her, or was she important enough to you to drive 300 miles to see her on a weekend while you're two working in separate locations, and then you work again, and then you come back and see her? If your kids are important to you, and having a life that is surrounded by God's blessing is important to you, make it a priority to pray for your kids, and to pray for your kids with your kids. And like you were just talking about with your son, the importance of praying over, Lord, bless them at school today, protect them from, this influence. We live in a crazy world. Protect them from this possible harm, protect them from, bullying, from, getting a bad grade because they were careless, or, show them your life, show them you through a teacher, through something, let them have an encounter with you today. Now you're priming them to think, when a bully comes up to them and says something to them, they might respond by punching the bully in the nose and starting a big fight, but they also might respond with love and grace because you're putting in their mind, we need to live like Christ. Dad just prayed for me today that I would honor the Lord and I would live like him. I'm going to try to do it in this circumstance.
Yeah.
And then an hour later, they might do something really stupid. But still, you're helping them, you're guiding them along that path. So
and it'll be in their mind, what you just prayed for them, I hope, as well. And I think that's a great point too, because like when we're praying, we're praying for these things to help us to honor the Lord. So when we get to an opportunity where we have a choice, honor him or dishonor him, hopefully we're thinking, I just prayed for this over here to honor him, so I should do this. I should make this decision. I should say this thing. I should think this thing. And so it is about us, aligning aligning our thoughts with the Lord, aligning our will with his will, which is already set and perfect. We just have to kind of figure out, how we fit into that. And having that constant, attitude of through prayer of, okay, how am I gonna show love the most today? Because God shows love to me, and how am I gonna show love like he shows love to me? Like those are things that are gonna be super helpful for us, with our children, with our spouses, with our coworkers, with our society. And then also having that, wisdom. Wisdom is kind of knowing, what to do. Like, okay, here's some options, right? And which option am I going to take here? Which is the right one to take here? Like we want to have that wisdom from God, and again, not just from ourselves, because if it's just from within, then sometimes our sinfulness can cloud that, right? But if it's wisdom from the Lord, then there's going to be less likelihood of our sinfulness to cloud it. Now, as we develop as believers, as we grow closer to the Lord, like hopefully what we're seeing is that we are allowing the Lord to have more control over our thoughts and over our minds, and obviously our physical actions, words, etc. And so that way, as we kind of go down the path of life, like our decisions just seem to be wiser, right? Because we're becoming more like him and doing things and acting the way and speaking and thinking like the Lord. And versus, when we're younger in our faith, and we may not be walking as close to him yet, and we haven't had that time to develop that relationship. And so prayer helps us do that. Just like we've said before, if we want to know our spouse, we better hang out with our spouse. Like if we want to know the Lord, then let's talk to him, right? Let's spend time with him. Let's bring requests before him, and then also be silent with him and allow him to speak to us. And I think there's it's that two-way street.
Yeah, I mean, and just to wrap everything up, what you were talking about there, God's faithful in this. He's promised, like you said earlier, if you pray for wisdom, I'll give it to you. And so he is faithful. He's been faithful, and he has provided for his people from the very beginning. He created this world out of nothing for us. He made the garden for Adam and Eve, provided for them, knowing what they were going to do, how they were going to rebel, still provided for them. Continually throughout the history of Israel, he provided for them, gave them everything they wanted, took them out of captivity. They rebelled against him. He still loved them again. He brought them back. And so he continues to demonstrate his faithfulness and his provision. And that's something that we can trust. And that's why we should pray and continue to pray, is we know that there's, like you said, his will is set. His will is a certain path. And we need to align ourselves with his path and his will, knowing that it's right and it's straight and it is sure to lead us to good places, and places that honor him and help us be the best fathers that we can be and be most like Christ.
Love it, man. And to close this down, and not in anything serious, but you said something a minute ago about we don't pray to God, he's going to promise to give us all our wildest dreams. You know who did promise to give you all your wildest dreams?
Who?
Napoleon Dynamite. When he was asking the student body to vote for Pedro, he said, if you vote for Pedro, all your wildest dreams will come true. So there's number one. Number two is, if anyone out there in the internet world can tell me where my shirt is from, what movie this shirt came from, then you win a special prize.
Tri-lambda.
Yeah, Tri-lambs. If you're listening to this and you can message Will on our social medias, Lost Boys of Found Fathers, Instagram, X, Facebook.
Yeah, comment on YouTube.
Yep, comment on YouTube, and you win a special prize. This prize is undetermined yet. There's probably going to be a shout out on our next episode. That's going to be your prize. But if you know where this shirt came from, you win a special prize and a special place in my heart.
Special place in our heart. That's more important.
There you go. That's right. So, guys, let's just remember, right, to pray for wisdom and strength. Make that a path that you follow every day, where we don't just get up and get on with our day, that we get up early, even if it's 5 minutes earlier that you're getting up, so that way you spend an extra 5 minutes with the Lord. Like, start there, like start somewhere, and then as you go throughout the day, keep that conversation with the Lord going. Allow His wisdom, His strength, His love to flow through you. Thank y'all for joining us today. Again, this was episode 12. We got 2 more episodes, it looks like, most likely in this series. Go back and check out episodes 1 through 11. Thank y'all for joining us today. Let's not be lost. Let's be found in Him.